Hey everybody, this is Praxis. In this video we're talking about Donald Trump and why I've decided to leave the United States. According to YouTube, on average, 60% of all people who start watching my videos have already stopped by this point in the video. But if you're still with me, perhaps you're writing a nasty comment down below about how I don't love Donald Trump quite enough. Here's where we get to the actual video. This video is tangentially about Donald Trump because he's going to be the next president of the United States, but really it's about my plans for possibly leaving the United States. And I say possibly because whenever I make preparation plans, you don't know for certain what's going to happen. When I buy something like a gas mask, I buy that kind of almost with the hopes that I'll never have to use it, but I might need to use it. If I buckle up my seatbelt when I get into the car, I buckle up just in case I'm in an accident, but I hope that I'm not in an accident. I hope that the seatbelt is unnecessary. And in the same way, the plans that I'm making for leaving the United States are plans that I really hope that I never have to implement. And realistically, due to the fact that Donald Trump got elected, some of the pressure, some of the time pressure on these plans, which I've actually been working on for several years, I think is actually lifted slightly. While some people feel that Donald Trump is going to create imminent collapse, I feel like, if anything, his election has probably kind of staved off some problems, not solved them, not made it so that they're never going to be a problem for us, but kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit on a couple of these things. So some of my time pressure is a little relaxed at this point. And time pressure is exactly one of the topics that I wanted to talk about. If you're a subscriber to my channel, you might notice that I have not been releasing that many videos on my channel lately. Now that's for a couple of reasons. One reason is that my camera broke and I had to replace it with this new camera. I hope you like this new camera and that the sound quality is okay. It took me a while to decide whether or not I wanted to do that because this channel, despite what the trolls seem to think about me, this channel is not a business. I don't make a ton of money on this channel. In fact, it's more of a hobby that kind of maybe sometimes kind of pays for itself, but usually probably not so much. And if I make any money at all, it's not even minimum wage on this channel. So dumping money into a new camera was kind of a big decision for me, and it took me a while to do it. And because of that, I wasn't making a lot of videos because my camera was broken. The other reason, though, relates to leaving the country, and it is that I've been awfully busy trying to set these plans in motion so that I have kind of a plan B. A bug out location. For many people who are into prepping and preparedness, a bug out location is something that they might dream or aspire to have for themselves, especially people who live in the city. If there was ever a real major cataclysm, cities would not be a really great place to be hanging out. So the idea of leaving the city, bugging out to some kind of a retreat location is probably a good idea. And for a lot of people who are into prepping and preparedness, having any kind of a bug out location is a dream that is kind of in their future and they're kind of working on. My present home where I live is sort of a dream bug out location for many people. I just live in my bug out retreat, which begs the question, well, why do you feel like you need to leave the country if you're already living in a place that's pretty good? And that's a good question because right now things really are pretty good where we are. If I didn't have radio, if I didn't have internet, if I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the rest of the world, life here is really idyllic, and you wouldn't know that there was anything to really even prep for other than the occasional winter storm or something along those lines. So why is it that I'm making plans to leave what is something that a lot of people would aspire to go to during an emergency? Well, the reason is because I don't like the idea of having all my eggs in this one basket. And especially looking at what we're facing in the world today, there are scenarios where I might feel the need to leave not only the country, but the entire Northern Hemisphere. And by my saying that, you're probably guessing what some of my concerns are, and you would guess correctly if you were thinking, nuclear issues. If there was some kind of a nuclear confrontation and, a lot of stuff got thrown up into the atmosphere in the Northern Hemisphere, it would be best not to be in this hemisphere, and it might very well not be a good idea to be here in the United States for a variety of different reasons. Again, I'm not imminently planning on leaving, but I want to have the backup plan in place. That's what prepping is all about. So in this video, what I wanted to talk about is what my backup plan is, what I've been working on so hard, what's been distracting me, aside from the fact that I had a broken camera, what has been distracting me and making me so busy that I haven't been releasing that many videos. I wanted to let you guys in on this because I think this is really important, and I understand that this threatens to make my channel even less accessible to most people. I remember over the past couple of years, I had been working on making this bug out retreat location. And as I was doing it, I remember making a video here that I shared on my channel. And I said that the fact that I'm doing this, moving from where I was, which is already a pretty good place initially, to this even better place with a more off-grid kind of a house, I understood that a lot of the projects that I was going to be working on my channel, like building culverts, for waterways so I can get deeper into the woods. Although this thing I did not document here on my channel because I had a broken camera while I was working on this particular project. The kinds of things that I'm working on, the kind of things that I tend to share on this channel are outside of the immediate action list of most people who are into prepping and preparedness, because the type of stuff that I'm doing is the kind of stuff you do after you've kind of checked off a lot of other boxes. And I understood that when I was doing this and I changed the nature of my channel to share what I'm doing here, I was going to make it so that my videos were less interesting to most people, because most people aren't at the level that I am operating at. And I understand that with the topic of this video, I am pushing the envelope even further, because not only am I living in the kind of place that most people aspire to, I'm making plans for leaving this place and going to like a next level kind of situation. I think this is just the nature of humans, or well, I don't know, it's the nature of me and the kind of humans that I tend to have a lot of respect for, which are the kind of people that get to the top of a mountain and don't just sit there. I mean, you appreciate the view from where you are at whatever you've accomplished. But when you get to the top of a mountain, you see the next one, and you get to there and you see the next one and the next one. And when I say that, I'm not trying to glamorize the idea of never being happy with where you are, but to always have an enthusiasm and excitement about new things that you can try, new ways of improving things. That's just my nature, that no matter how much I achieve, I know I was talking to my parents recently, and I was finishing up my house, and I think it was my mother, and she was saying, what are you going to do once you finish this house? What are you going to have to be excited about? And I just said to her, I'll never run out of projects. There's always something that I'm planning. In fact, this culvert is to create a road, and the road is to go deeper into the woods. And over down here in the forest, I plan on building a submerged greenhouse, maybe even kind of an entire underground house bunker kind of situation. I built a root cellar fallout shelter, but I'd love to make a really, really insane one, like legit underground bunker kind of house. I never run out of projects, and I never run out of things in my mind that I think could improve my situation. Now, before I start talking about where we're planning on potentially moving, I want to reference a few things that I've already talked about. Building this culvert, building this road, talking about building an underground greenhouse. The simple fact that I am talking about the idea of going to another place doesn't mean that I'm abandoning where I'm at, and it doesn't mean that I'm abandoning an enthusiasm for continuing to improve this place and make it better and better. It would be nice if everybody could play nice, and none of the things that would prompt us to need to leave the country would ever happen, and we could be perfectly happy here. And in the location that I'm about to talk about, we'll secure some land there, and then it just becomes a vacation place. It's a free place to stay for vacations. So none of the stuff that I'm talking about in this video should be interpreted as me abandoning all the things that I've done. What I'm talking about here is expanding and broadening out horizons to other areas. And it's just saying that right there reminds me of why there's so many people that come into videos like this and talk about that this stuff is all fear porn, and people like myself and perhaps you, we all just live in fear all the time. Really, because I think people like that don't have the attention span to get this deep into the videos. And I don't know, I presume that you can read my enthusiasm for these projects, my excitement for this type of stuff, my enjoyment of this type of stuff. I think people that think that preppers are just constantly living in fear are really projecting their own fears onto us, because this stuff is exciting to me. This is, I didn't build this culvert out of fear that I wouldn't have a bunker under the ground over here. And it's like, I have an existential fear that if I don't have a bunker, my life's going to be over. So I need to have this culvert so I can get to my bunker. I get really excited about this stuff. And the idea of leaving the country, going off abroad, becoming an expat, potentially, this is something I'm excited about as well. It's an adventure. It's a way of stretching your mind. It's challenging. It's challenging. And I love the feeling of being challenged, the feeling of being pushed outside my comfort zone. That's one of the things I like about prepping and preparedness, is it's about being outside your comfort zone and kind of working with that. So that's the preamble to this video. Let's get into the video. The reasons that I want to have a secondary location is because I have concerns over conflict, war, pollution, a lot of stuff related to nuclear power, nuclear weapons. Here in the Northeast, we have a lot of nuclear power plants. I am not a fan of nuclear power plants. I initially never really had anything against them until I moved near one for about 10 years of my life. And you know, just reading in the local paper constantly about all the issues that they were having at these nuclear power plants. One day, the entire backup cooling system collapsed. It rusted out. It literally rusted out and collapsed. How many times do you have to pay off an inspector to look the other way to have your system not only fail, but to rust completely, where the pipes are all falling apart? You know, nuclear power might work if it was run by, you know, Jesus and angels, but the fact is that humans run these systems, and there's always human error, human greed, human you know, hubris, and whenever you get humans in the mix, mistakes happen. And when mistakes happen with a coal fire plant, you know, yeah, yuck, that's bad. When they happen with a nuclear power plant, it is, you know, horrific. So nuclear power, nuclear weapons, all these things, I have concerns over them, and I would like to have a backup plan. Now, we've been looking all over the planet at this point for what are better places to be. And as an American, this may sound like a joke, me saying it, but as an American, if you have concerns over finding you know, a place that has more, you know, resilience, more ability, offers you a better ability to, you know, weather bumps in the road and you know, emergency events and things of that nature, you know, you're hard pressed to find better places than the United States. And I know it almost sounds like a joke with how much people complain about things here in the United States and government, and you know, with the state of like our bloated bureaucracy and our huge national debt and all those things. You know, all that stuff notwithstanding, there are a lot of really positive things about the United States when it comes to prepping and preparedness. For one, this place is big. There is a lot of space here. There's a lot of room for people to kind of spread out, have their own space, and live off the resources of the land. That is a huge benefit of this area. Additionally, if you live in the United States, you already know the culture. And if you already know the culture of a place, you know, it's one thing to move from one region to another. Like if you're like a slick-talking New Yorker and you go down to, I don't know, Cajun country or something like that. You know, people are giving you side eyes about like, you know, who's this city slicker? Wait, I use the wrong accent for the Cajun people. But you know, if you're moving within your own country, you know, there's that kind of culture shock to some degree, but it pales in comparison with the kind of culture shock you get with actually going to you know, a real other culture in the world. So that's a big challenge there. You know, trying to find your place within the United States, it's a lot easier than, you know, trying to find it, you know, outside in the rest of the world. But, you know, we've been looking at the entire world, and I'm just going to kind of go through the regions, and eventually we settled on a country, and I want to share that country with you. Starting with the United States, you know, you got the United States and Canada right there. In terms of, you know, freedom and individual liberties, you know, if you're in the United States, you're not going to want to move to Canada. There are a lot of great things about Canada. One of them, I think, is that their public health system works a heck of a lot better than the health system, the healthcare system we have here in the United States. You know, there are pros and cons, but it's kind of like driving a Prius. When you drive a Prius, you get pretty addicted to the idea that gasoline, you know, if you buy a gallon of gas, you can go like 55 miles on that 1 gallon of gasoline. That becomes pretty addictive. And in the same way, if you are a United States citizen, you get pretty addicted to a lot of these kind of personal freedoms that we enjoy here. And going to, you know, a place like Canada where there are fewer of those, you know, maybe you get fixated on it a little bit too much, but it's hard to give up those kind of things when you've become kind of accustomed to them. So if you're a United States citizen and you're concerned with the idea of personal liberties, especially during emergency events, because during emergency events, those things tend to get clamped down. We're going to talk a little bit more about that with some other countries that I've ruled out for those reasons. You know, you're not going to want to move to Canada. So look, that rules out all of North America right there. So let's kind of head to the east. We head to the east, we hit Europe. pretty much anywhere in Europe, language isn't going to be a problem if you are from the United States. There's a lot of countries in Europe that don't speak English, but many people within Europe use English as a second language because there's such a patchwork of languages within Europe. They needed some kind of like Esperanto for people to be able to talk to each other, and at least at present that language happens to be English. So as an English speaker, there's a benefit there. But if your concern is World War III, that's going to be ground zero. The whole area around Europe. So if you have concerns about that, Europe is not looking all that great. If you keep heading east, you get into Russia, and again, people complain about the government here in this country in terms of personal liberties, but if you don't like it here, try living, under the system in Russia. You go even further east, and it gets even worse when you get to China. There are a lot of wonderful things about China, but their government, in my opinion, is not one of those things. That pretty much rules out the entire Northern Hemisphere right there. USA, Canada, Europe, Russia, and China right off the map right there for pretty easy reasons. So if you're planning on leaving the United States for the idea of war, conflict, personal liberties, things of that nature, you might as well just stay where you are, because I think that's probably the best place to be in the Northern Hemisphere. But we got another hemisphere called the Southern Hemisphere. In there we've got South America, we've got Africa, and then we've got Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, and a bunch of scattered little islands all over the place. Let's jump onto the little islands first, because the idea of moving to a little island if you're a prepper, it kind of sounds pretty appealing. You kind of cut off from a lot of the problems of society. There's fewer people. There's a lot of appealing things to that. Additional is the fact that a lot of these are in tropical places and they're just absolutely beautiful. But there are other challenges facing us that I think we really need to take seriously. One of them is climate change and the potential for sea levels really altering during our lifetime and certainly during our children's lifetime. And I would not want to set up shop in a place that is generally low-lying and is going to either get completely, flooded out or largely flooded out. Even if you're on an island where a lot of it's low-lying, but it's got some high areas, a lot of people tend to live in the low-lying areas. And what if you're the newcomer, that New Yorker going to Cajun country, and you buy up on the hill because you're smart? What happens when all those low-lying areas get all flooded out and the majority of the population of this island, who are the natives there, and you're the alien, you're the, what's the word we use? Refugee, I guess. How kindly are they going to look to you occupying all the awesome land up on the hill? So I just don't think that would be a really great situation to put yourself in with the idea of rising sea levels. And in addition to that, it's just, it's more difficult on small islands, getting things on and off the island and availability of different things. So I think small islands are kind of off the map. Kind of coming back from the east, you got New Zealand and Australia. Those are big islands, but I think both of those get stricken out of contention based on those civil rights, civil liberties kind of issues. COVID was a wonderful example for both people and governments to really show their true colors. I think when people get scared and drunk, they really show you who they really are. And during COVID, there were a lot of people that got scared, and when there were a lot of governments, I suppose, that got drunk on power. And Australia and New Zealand really demonstrated their true colors in terms of how much the governments respected people's individual liberties in those areas. And COVID was such a vanilla emergency. I mean, insofar as it was an emergency at all, it was really an emergency that was manufactured by the response to the disease that was going around. The majority of the issues came from the response. And if people in those countries acted that extreme during that kind of vanilla emergency, imagine what they'd be doing during a real, actual existential threat emergency. So Australia, New Zealand, I think, out of contention. Coming back from the east, we hit Africa. And I'm sure there are a lot of wonderful things about Africa, and I don't want to paint an entire continent with one brush, but there are a lot of unstable governments in Africa, and I would not want to mess with that continent. It's a beautiful continent, and I'm sure there are little pockets here and there that are functional, but when things go wrong in Africa, they go really, really wrong, politically. And in addition to that, it is ground zero for a lot of new emerging germs. The entire tropical belt, kind of falls into that category. But Africa in particular, I think perhaps because it has such a huge east-west stretch of that kind of tropical belt where there's just contiguous movement of people and animals, it's a real factory for creating a lot of new viruses and illnesses. So for that reason, I feel like Africa is just out of contention, which just leaves you with Central and South America. Now, Central America, like Africa, is in that kind of tropical belt. There are a lot of nice things about being in the tropical belt, but again, getting back to global warming and climate change, and I don't know if this is going to be something that I in my life am going to see, but in terms of setting up something for my kid and his children after him, I don't know that I would want to really set up shop in the tropics, because I think there's a real legitimate chance that with the changing climate, that the tropics could potentially, and I use the word potentially instead of guaranteed, could potentially become kind of unlivable in terms of heat. And on top of that, you also have kind of the disease aspects to it, and there are a lot of troublesome insects in the tropics. The mosquitoes, obviously being on the top of the list. Things like botflies that lay eggs under your skin, the scorpions. There's a lot of troublesome insects in the tropics. So leaving that area alone, it kind of pushes you down into South America. Now, the challenge with South America is in the way that Europe kind of uses English as their intermediary language between all the different groups. Latin America doesn't use English because Latin America has a perfectly good intermediary language, which is Spanish. And much of Latin America is speaking Spanish. There's some Portuguese and some other languages smattered through there. But the common language that people can all communicate in is Spanish, and for that reason, they don't really need English. So South America is kind of a challenge for people who aren't naturally Spanish speaking. I'm not naturally Spanish speaking, because there's not a lot of utility of the English language in certain pockets there. If you're in the cities, you're probably going to be fine in most places. But as a prepper, I ain't looking to go in and hang out in cities. So, we're thinking about smaller villages. So that's the big challenge with all of Latin America and South America. And now, did I just rule out the entire planet? No, because I just said that South America is a challenge because of language. I didn't say that I shy away from a challenge. South America is where we are focused on, and specifically in Central and South America, there are two countries that politically have their act together in terms of peace and stability and a respect for private property, personal property rights, because a lot of Latin American countries, don't have the best track record when it comes to personal property and that property getting nationalized and taken by the government. There are two countries that kind of stand out as being good with personal property rights. That is Costa Rica and Uruguay. Costa Rica is more in the tropical area, so that is a little bit of a strike against it. Beautiful country, absolutely beautiful country now. But Uruguay is the country that we are really looking at. And Uruguay also has another benefit over Costa Rica, which is the approach of the government towards people's an individual's right to defend themselves using a firearm. Costa Rica is very against the idea that an individual should have the right to be able to defend themselves using, personal protective devices like a firearm. Uruguay, on the other hand, actually has more firearms per capita than any other Latin American country, as far as I'm aware. And this might come as a shock to a lot of liberal and progressive people, or at least people that call themselves that now. Uruguay, despite having so many more firearms than all of these other Latin American countries, is actually number one safest in terms of law and order, crime and things like that. So Uruguay is where we are focused right now. Now, I'm not going to get any deeper than that into this. In this video, I wanted to share with you the problem, which is I think that it's important to have a plan B to be able to get away from the Northern Hemisphere in case of, the issues that I talked about. I wanted to talk about some of the areas that we considered and have, taken off of our list. And I wanted to talk about the country that we're focused on. Now, going forward on my channel, I'm going to be sharing an awful lot more about this. I've been researching it an enormous amount. There is a lot to know about becoming a resident of another country, keeping kind of your feet in two different places at the same time, the processes that are involved in that. We've been going through an awful lot of paperwork, kind of getting things going in that direction. And again, this is not an immediate plan that I plan on pulling the trigger for. I would love it if all the work that I'm about to be doing, all the work that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, is not for anything else other than my own personal enrichment, my own mental elasticity, working through some of these kind of challenges, and creating a vacation destination that we could go to periodically. This is not something where we're imminently planning on leaving, but I think we should plan on having the ability to leave with not too much warning if the need should arise. And over the next months and years, I'm going to be sharing with you our process of creating a Plan B destination in the Southern Hemisphere, in all likelihood in the country of Uruguay. That's it, and thanks for watching. Hey YouTube preppers, if you enjoyed this video, here's another that I think you might like. But before you click on it, I wanted to take a moment to thank all the people you see on the right-hand side of your screen. They help to support all the work that I do here over at patreon.com. If you'd like to join them and get your name added to the list, the link's below.